I accidentally groped a teacher when I was in the 8th grade. I was a new student at my middle school, and 2 months into the school year, I'd still not found a friend group. I was a pretty shy kid. For Halloween, one of the student organizations put on a haunted house in the auditorium during lunch. The haunted house was really just a maze created using a series of movable panels as walls where student volunteers and teachers would jump scare students as they went through. To enter into the haunted house, we had to line up outside the auditorium, wait to be let in as a small group one at a time. Since I was a lonely, sad boy, I got in line by myself while other students lined up with their friends. One thing to know is that we were in Southern California, so there's still quite a bit of sun even in October. Also, since the haunted house was organized by 12 and 13-year-olds, they thought having their fellow students go through the maze in almost complete darkness would make things extra scary. When the door shut behind us, the girls started screaming because we couldn't see shit with our light-constricted pupils. Luckily for them, they had each other, so they held hands and went screaming blindly into the dark, leaving me behind. I just stood there, not quite sure which direction to go. After several seconds, I assumed the universal position of the suddenly blind. Arms and hands out, body in a slight crouch. I thought if I could find a wall, I could use my hands to guide myself through the haunted house until my eyes adjusted to the dark. After working up some courage, I began shuffling my feet in one direction, and eventually my hands touched one of the fabric panels. I hugged the wall and walked sideways like a crab, using my hands and feet to feel the walls. After a short distance, my hands came upon a slightly different textured fabric, and my logic told me this was potentially a clue that might help me figure out where I was. So in my confused state of terror, I began blindly and frantically pawing at this thing. As my hand began to raise, I encountered shapes. It was at this exact moment my eyes began to adjust to the dark, and I saw a pair of eyes, wide as saucers, looking down at me. I then realized the thing in front of me wasn't a feature of the haunted house, but one of the younger teachers at the school, dressed as a black cat, and the fabric I was touching was a sweater, and the shapes in my hands were bazungas. To save us both from embarrassment, I pretended I was still blind and immediately turned in a different direction and shuffled away with my hands out. Thankfully, I never had a class with her. My whole existence is being my dead brother's replacement. My little brother Mark was clearly my mom and dad's golden child. I never had any ill will towards Mark. Actually, we were tight growing up. I quickly became the problem child, sent to boarding schools, kicked out, blacklisted from the family, etc. Mark had some demons and threw himself off a freeway and died. He was only 28. My parents put all their eggs in his basket. He was going to be a vet, marry his girlfriend, have lots of cherub babies, be rich, and live a happy life. That put pressure on me to be the golden child now. People might think that I just got my act together by going from a drug-addicted, irresponsible party boy to a pediatric nurse with a wife and 2 kids who does CrossFit. No, I did all that because I needed to replace my brother. If I didn't, then both my parents would be dead, and I'd be all alone in this world. I know they wish that I had died instead of Mark, and it's okay. Screaming in my truck in the parking lot. I just got married to the girl I love, probably a little more than 2 years ago. She's 25 and I'm 29, and this bitch has been driving me fucking nuts since then. She has such a problem with me and my hobbies. Even though she has absolutely none, she also has no job or income coming in besides her OnlyFans that makes about $30 a month. But when I get a real check and buy some Batman figures, she gets mad at me. My bitch hoe wife also constantly argues with her sister and the rest of her family, keeping me from any sleep. And when she isn't also smoking weed, she will come up with something for me to do, like I don't fucking work 60 hours a week. I'm not cleaning the dishes or taking out your fucking trash. She was my favorite person when we were dating, but now she's just a total nightmare, and I need to get this scumbag out of my life. But I'm afraid of losing my house if we divorce. My youngest sister was killed by a stranger on her 19th birthday. She was on a flight from Florida to Philly. It was her birthday and she was going to visit family and have a vacation as a present. She met a guy around her age to whom she was attracted to. Now, she was no angel, but she was a good soul and never tried to harm or upset anyone, ever. But being 19, having had an insanely traumatic childhood and growing up in the ghetto as the youngest of 9 siblings, 6 of which were all mid to high level gang members, she was no stranger to drugs and alcohol. She wasn't wild with it, having seen me become a junkie at 12 and get clean by 15, all the while maintaining alcoholism as well as her 3 other brothers being full-blown alcoholics by their teens. She was careful, but she still liked to have a good time on the weekends. Well, this fucking coward she met on the plane and conversed with the whole flight had given her 4 perk 10s a little while before landing, which she popped right there. She caught a nice high, as well as giving her a few mixed drinks throughout, but she was by no means fucked up. She had a decent buzz and was in good spirits. She called her other brother and I when she landed and told us all of that, to which I said, "Girl, please be careful," and she said, "I will be, and I love y'all, talk to y'all later." What she hadn't told us was that her and the dude had exchanged numbers and planned to meet up later. Well, the night went on, and she celebrated her day with close family that she hadn't seen for a while. She had some cake, and they all went to bed, planning to go out on the town the next day. Except, she hadn't hit the hay like they all did. She had been texting the dude all night, and he had convinced her to sneak out. He would pick her up, and they would go out in the town that night. His treat. So she did. Met up with him, and they went bar hopping. We talked to her twice during the night. First time I kinda gave her some harsh words. Nothing of an attack, just telling her she was playing with fire and not to get too fucked up with a total stranger in an unfamiliar place. And the second time, just to check in around 12 a.m., he had given her a few more perks, and she had had more drinks, and she said she was waiting to call it a night. But he was hesitant, wanting her to chill with him longer, but she did give in and agreed to one more drink. But what she didn't know was that drink had 2 crushed up Xanny bars and a 20 bag of heroin laced in it. She, not knowing this, smashed the drink in one big gulp and told him to take her home. 20 minutes later, she was ODing while he drove around Philly. And instead of getting her any help, taking her to a hospital, calling an ambulance, anything, he instead chose to drive all the way to Dover, Delaware, until she stopped breathing. He then parked somewhere dark and private and sexually assaulted her lifeless body. He then drove to the closest ER, pulled up to the front, pushed her body out in the car, and sped away. Her birthday was the day before mine, so the next morning, my B-day, I was woke up to my brother beating on my door and screaming through tears that she was dead. I felt like I couldn't breathe for the entire day, calling everyone we knew up there trying to figure out what the fuck was going on. The police did their thing in trying to get to the bottom of it. We got a call about 10 days later from our cousin saying that the police found him. Did all they could, but had nothing on him, so he wouldn't be charged for the murder. The next day, he left a voicemail on my brother's phone saying, "You don't know who I am, but you better ask around. I own this city, and I can have you all touched in your own hood." I was drowning in pure hatred and pain and had nowhere to sink it. Well, my cousin did some digging. She knew this guy's group and went on some undercover hit, pretending like his best friend, and got him to tell her what his best friend had confessed to him, which was everything I wrote above. Cops still couldn't do anything, so I decided that was enough for me. My brother and I borrowed a family friend's car, drove up to Philly, and went into stealth mode and patiently waited. We caught him a few days later going into a bar around 11 p.m. Around 2 a.m., he stumbled out by himself and left on foot for his home. We got out and slowly followed him. Minutes later, he went down an alley between two businesses completely empty and dark. We ran up on him, and he fell. My brother ran and picked him up and was about to empty his .357 into him, but I told him no. He didn't grow up with us, the bad kids. He grew up in a gated community and was in college to become a marine biologist. I told him, I know you're hurting, and I know you want his blood on your hands. But you're the only one of us 9 gypsy scumbag kids that's gonna be something, that's gonna change people's lives, and I can't let you throw it all away for this sack of shit. At this point, the guy was shitting himself, having realized who we were and what this was. I told my brother to let him go, and he tried to run off. I caught up instantly and dropped him with a right hook to the kidney. I then sat on his stomach, wrapped my hands around his throat, and told him to look into my eyes as I choked the very last breath from his body. I then left a picture of my sister in his hand, my favorite picture. It was taken when she was 16 on the beach after her first day ever trying to surf. We drove back home and continued on. Months went by and I waited daily for some out-of-town detectives to show up and take me in. That was 7 years ago. I don't feel bad for killing him. I feel bad for his mother, not knowing why her son was taken from her, or for anyone who loved him. It wasn't their fault. But they also didn't know what he was capable of and what he took from us. When the time comes, I'll go without a fight. I'll let them lock me up. I'll sit in that cell every day with a smile on my face, knowing that he didn't get away with killing my sister and pushing her out of that car like a bag of trash. She died in Dover. R.I.P. Sunshine.